everybody. Welcome to our second Knowledge Transfer web series. We are going to get started very shortly, so thank you for those that are already on, and we will start shortly. It is now time to start our webinar. I want to thank everyone for joining today's online event, Idea Seeker. If you attended our first webinar last month, thank you for coming back. If this is your first time joining us on our monthly webinars, we hope that you'll continue in the future, and we hope that you enjoyed this one. First off, I would like to have a couple of housekeeping things to let you know. There's no need to take any screenshots of this presentation. We are going to record the presentation as well as send you the link after this is over. Secondly, if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please put them in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will answer questions at the end of this, and hopefully we'll address everything that you guys have to ask. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, Axel Schulzer. If you were on our last one, you have already met him before. But if you are new, I would like to introduce him. So he is the founder and chair of the World Innovations Forum. He was a highly innovative entrepreneur himself, and he changed the face of the tech distribution in the 80s and built a $5 billion tech distributor with an all-new business model. In 1997, he built the first company with a digital stock exchange, and in 2000, Axel created one of the software as a service based businesses with a patented and very distributed sales channel management software. From 2015 onwards, Axel has started to help startups to develop distributed businesses in a far more methodical way than anybody else. And he is here today to talk about Idea Seekers. So I'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Alyssa. Yeah, and good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Really happy to see so many people on this second knowledge transfer series. And we're talking today about idea seekers and basically where do all these good ideas come from. And obviously I have kind of a wealth of experience myself because I created some of these ideas, and we will actually see that I didn't really create it. But also from friends of mine and from peers in Silicon Valley. There's many people, you know, sitting together and obviously exchange, how did this happen? How did you get to this idea? And so this is basically the topic of today. With that said, let me start with a little bit about the World Innovations Forum. So these were theoretically back in the old days. I mean, 3 seconds ago, I read a good news from our ambassador in Vietnam. So they're opening up, no more COVID-19 cases. So it goes slowly but steadily, and everybody's trying to take care of this as good as possible. So that's good news. So, and what you see here on the picture, many events. I mean, this is how we used to work on the ground, and so it's still digitally, and we'll probably keep that moment of digital moving forward also in the months and probably years to come. But obviously, we want to go back also to real life activities. Now, in this series, we're basically using this as part of seeding innovation. We want to help you guys in the emerging countries, hungry to grow and hungry to build up your companies and build up your country, most importantly. And seeding innovation is literally trying to help seed the innovation that one day it blooms and flashes and goes forward. We do this in Sub-Saharan Africa countries, in some of the Southeast Asian countries. Sooner or later, probably next year or year after next year, depending on how things go, also in Latin America. And so this webinar series is one of the activities that we're doing. Amongst others, we will do monthly meetups, probably initially also because the event restrictions digitally, but very locally. So these are meetups locally, but online. And as soon as things go better with Corona, we'll get together again. Let me give you a summary from the first of these events, and just to, some of you have seen it and others maybe not, but the summary of the entrepreneur's DNA is something I want all of you to really comprehend, understand, and realize. So if you see this yellow top line, there are no skills, nothing inherited, no expertise, no training. So these things are traits. These are stuff that you come with after you're born, and some of you may have had a chance to develop it a little bit further, others not so much. But if there is some sort of DNA in you, then it's these 10 items: fearless, risk-taking. I mean, it comes also to the idea creation and the idea seeking today. You know, whenever you have this idea, you need to take a risk to build a company on this idea, because at this very moment you have the idea, nobody on earth knows whether it's really going or not. Fearlessness, meaning, yeah, risk is risk and fearless is fearless. I mean, you will need to go forward. Independent, meaning, okay, you are not dependent on all kinds of things in the society, that the government does something and money is there and so on. Independent needs you do your thing. Curiosity and openness, very, very critical, that you actually are curious enough to look for opportunities and to understand that there is one and see the opportunity. And curiousness is, in some cultures, is actually even negative. And one of these European cultures where I come from, you know, you get, as a kid, you get trained to not be too curious, which is actually a bad thing to do. But, you know, we have it or don't. And if we have it, it will come back, even if somebody prevents it. Creativity and more or less compositivity, that's a new term that you will probably see in the next following knowledge transfer series. Determined, you need to be smart, intelligent, connected, communicative, confident, and involving. These are the things that no university is going to teach you that, because it's not teachable. You cannot learn to be determined. I mean, people can say, you need to be determined, but what do you say? I'm not really sure. I don't know. I'm, you know, if you are determined to do something and move forward and change the world, then you have it, whether you want it or not. So that's it. And built on these sort of traits of an entrepreneur, we want to go to the next step today: idea seekers. Where are great ideas coming from? And I have seen and heard and read these questions so many times on Quora of all these events. People ask, you know, how do you come up with these ideas? Or I get so many questions, I mean, literally every week. I want to become an entrepreneur, but I don't know really what I should do. Who can help me? And so today's session is really about, how do you find ideas or get ideas? Where are they coming from? And how can you deal with it? And at the end of the day, so to speak, you will realize stories from idea seekers probably help most, that you find your own story and your own idea. That's what we're going to do today. So before we start, let me say something about where it comes from physically. I mean, very obviously, it comes from the brain. And the brain is the source of all ideas ever had. So if we not only say, yeah, sure, of course, it comes from the brain, but if you actually realize that, sorry, there's a major echo. And Marita? Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. So excuse me, I had a little bit of technical glitch here. So when you understand it comes from the brain, then you also will want to understand, so how does the brain do things? And that's one of the things in probably most of the cases that you will hear, I don't know, I mean, you know, accidentally and so on. And we will talk about this in future sessions in much more great detail when we actually get to idea management. But what we want to see and consider today is that the brain is the key, and the brain assumes and collects and aggregates information from the outside. And that's all what we need to know today. So there are no accidental, splashy, all of a sudden creative ideas. There are no divine signals coming down your brain and boom, there's the idea. If we understand that the brain is a logical organ that does things based on rules and regulations and based on things like you see something and you can memorize it, you hear something, you feel something, you can touch something, then we are far a step ahead of most people, because many people still think the idea comes all of a sudden and it just flashes and so on, and it doesn't. So with that said, let me go on forward and take a next step. And this is still kind of brain, it's mindset, but the mindset is done also in this 3-pound gorilla up there under our head. When we, and you will see this in cases, when we see opportunities, there are people who immediately think this is not for me, or immediately think this is not possible, or immediately think I need a lot of money to do this, or immediately think the government needs to help me to do that, and so forth. That are the major killer of ideas. This is the #1 killers of non-entrepreneurial people, that they just don't know how to start. So begin to think unlimited. And that is something, this is neither Western nor Eastern nor Southern nor Northern culture. It actually has been in culture, in all cultures around the globe, since more than 200, maybe 300,000 years. So it's good to know that this is not you, whoever you are, whether you are from Asia or from Africa, from Europe, from the US, I mean, anywhere. There is no difference in that regard. The thing is that we need to understand and learn and train our brain that there are no limits. Even if you say, come on, this is not realistic. I know it doesn't sound realistic, but that is part of the way you need to think if you're thinking about ideas. If you think about ideas and all the limitations, it will always be limited. And limited is not something that you can sell. So get off of it. Political problems, everybody has that, more or less in very different ways. Forget it. Cultural problems, oh, in our culture it's not working. I hear this a gazillion times. And in all cultures, there are entrepreneurs coming up with great stories. I mean, just a couple of years ago in Nigeria, some of you are from Nigeria. I mean, people started to think about mobile network, build up towers, and you know, today there's about 1 billion mobile phones in Africa, across Africa, because people had this great idea, this bold idea to make it happen. And they found ways, they found investors, and they found everybody else to actually make it a reality. So it is possible in every country. And go back 5,000 years ago, Egypt, pyramids. I mean, even today we don't know 100% how this is built, but there are people who said, unlimited thinking. They were in Egypt. So it doesn't matter whether it's pyramid or rockets to the moon or to Mars or in the rest of the universe. It doesn't matter. If you limit yourself, then you cannot deal with any ideas very well. If you think, okay, I need to get off of these limitations that I'm used to have, because we all start that way, that's the starting point for finding ideas and actually creating ideas And with these ideas, you create a business. So the first thing that works the best when you look for opportunities, identify problems, and problems you like to solve, problems you like to actually maybe had yourself, problems you're seeing, and it's all about problems. And it's an interesting thing that if you think back yourself, way back until you're a child, maybe a child above 14, 15 or something like that, maybe 12. You thought about, wow, this is a problem. Somebody should do that. Somebody should have this. Somebody should fix that. Somebody should. And that somebody should be you. If you're not the one who solves the problem, well, either somebody else does or nobody does. And we have gazillions of problems. We have probably millions of billions. Nobody has ever counted them. But we have enough problems that everybody could basically become an entrepreneur and solve one problem. And that's what all of us entrepreneurs did, one. Sometimes maybe you build 2 or 3 or 4 companies, and it's 4, but it's peanuts relatively to the amount of trouble we have in our world. And there's one killer, and I have to say this, it's actually laziness and lethargy. Meaning, oh, but I can't do this. Oh, this is way too much work. Well, yeah, okay. I mean, it is work. But if you feel that, I ask you to do one thing. Is there one person on the planet that could do that? And if this answer is a yes, then you should consider if it's possibly you. If this answer is a no, because it's impossible in your mind, well, then still consider, is your mind open enough? And then come back to the question, say, is it possible? And if it's still a no, then ask yourself, will it be possible in 100 years from now? You say, wow, 100 years. I mean, given the speed of innovation and all the changes that we see, yeah, maybe in 100 years. So in 100 years, you will probably be still alive. We're seeing the 100 years generation. And when you're growing older and older, you probably see 120, 130 years. There was a big advertising campaign. This was already actually, let me think, about 8 years ago. Billboards, this was in the US, from one of the large insurance companies. And it said, the first person who will become 130 years old is already born today. And this was not a joke. That was actually a real research that happened, that might be true. And so we're going older and older. And then the question, would it be possible in 100 years? Then the question is, why are you not starting today? Just identify a problem that you want to solve. Because if there's no problem, why should you fix something that doesn't exist? So the first thing is look for a problem. So, and like I said earlier, probably the best thing is to see examples how things actually started. Now, this is a company in Europe, Systech. And the problem was shopping carts get stolen or cards are scattered around a huge parking lot. And what they found is if we build a little chain system to connect shopping carts to each other, which is now it's across all Europe, across pretty much all Australia, some countries in Southeast Asia, probably some in, I believe, in South Africa, and maybe in some of your countries, you see this already, that shopping carts get connected through a chain system. And a person need to put basically $1 or euro or whatever the currency is into the shopping cart to release the chain, take it, bring the shopping cart back, and get your dollar back. So there's no cost involved in you. And the psychology of this system is shopping carts get back and they don't scatter around in the shopping places. But the question is, how did these guys come up with this idea? And now Franz, who is the CEO and the founder of the company, is a good friend of mine. And so I know the story from the very early days when they started, or actually a year after they started. So they had a different company and they ran this and they saw that the product they built was huge chandeliers, was sort of end of life cycle, and they had to either reorganize their lamp business or do something else. And so they said, well, let's see what problems are out there. And they didn't have the problem themselves. And this is the interesting case about this company, is that they actually wandered around Munich in Germany and looked at the marketplaces and looked at, the busy shopping streets, walked into stores, tried to see how people, behave when they get their car back or go into the subway and so on, and try to see problems that they could solve. They couldn't find any. I mean, they knew there's a lot, but it was just not theirs. And about 2 months or 3 months later, they were frustrated. And one of the two founders went shopping, and there was a brand new shopping center in Munich, and he couldn't get a cart. They were all around the parking lot. And so he saw one walk there, but somebody else grabbed the cart before him. And he was like, damn it, how stupid is this? Can't people just bring the cart back and we can all? But obviously no, because they packed up their stuff and they don't want to get it back. And they sat down together and said, this is a problem we want to solve, and didn't have an idea. They only know this is a problem, but they didn't know how. And then they come up with the idea to actually chain it together. And everybody would need to come with their own lock to unlock it. And I said, yeah, that's not good. Long story short, they found out this solution, which actually is, today sold, I think it's now 1 billion times. And I don't want to tell you how much money they make, but it's enough. And so each of these boxes, plastic and a steel chain, costs probably $2 or $3 in the production, and they sell it for 20. And if you sell millions and millions, you can calculate yourself how much money is left over. So that was a great invention, has a patent, and a great story how to get with a very, very simple problem to actually a very valuable idea. And the value is in multiple aspects. The value is obviously for the shoppers, who almost guaranteed get a shopping cart, because there will be enough shopping carts for every shopper in the market unless they're scattered around parking lots. It's also good for the shopping center, because one of these shopping carts cost about $1,000. It's not just a little bit of steel and so on, the stability. There's a lot of effort in actually build these shopping carts, which I learned from him. And so there's a real benefit for the shoppers. There's a real benefit for the shopping carts owner and for the shopping cart manufacturers, because they have a competitive advantage over those who don't have that system. So this is a win-win-win situation. Now let me move forward. This is my own experience. So I was at Rockwell International and had a steep career. So absolutely no reason to actually leave and start my own business. But we had a problem, and the problem was margin erosion, meaning the money the distributor makes between buying product and selling it to their resellers and customers is getting slimmer and slimmer, so that they could do less and less and less. And even the vendors lost money on the margin, and their resellers lost money, because there was so much conflict between everybody was competing with everybody else until nobody made money. The benefit was for the customer, but there was not a real benefit because the service was so limited, because the margin was so limited. So actually this was a lose-lose-lose situation. And I thought, if everybody would have a more clear step-by-step sales model, that would be wonderful. I told my boss said, you're crazy. This is never gonna work. It's way too complicated. And I actually thought, well, I try my own. I start a distributor that has a very, very clear channel strategy, selling exclusively to business partners, don't sell to large accounts directly. And everybody said this, even the resellers said, this is not possible. You will not survive, because you need the margin from the direct business, unfortunately. And so we were almost bankrupt. And then one day we actually made it. So So it worked out, and 10 years later, we were at $5 billion in revenue. We outperformed 8,000 of the tech distributors around the world. There were only 3 others with the same business model. One started right after us because the vendors told them that's the future. And then there was a third one who started later, but was already huge. And everybody else said, no, no, this is crazy, we don't. And these 3 were actually basically made it. We had no patent. We didn't even know that this would be patentable. Probably still not today, but in any case, so it was a major story. And if we look at Airbnb, same thing. They had a problem that they want to solve, like my problem with margin erosion. And here it was, they wanted to go to friends, and the 2 founders were, you know, traveling the US. I mean, very frequently, love traveling, hanging out with some friends over the weekend, anywhere in the States. But there was this day where nobody was available, and they wanted to go into New York for, I don't actually remember, and they just did not want to go in a hotel. And so they thought, okay, maybe friends of friends may, you know, simply take us, because it's so much more fun if you be with others and have sort of a little bit of an apartment with a fridge and live like in a home. And so they built this platform after all, saying, okay, we want to do this, and we just want to attract like-minded people. It wasn't built to be a gigantic business, but it became one because they solved not only their problem, but a problem for many, many, many people. And the interesting thing with Airbnb is that they outperformed the hotel business. I mean, they took a large chunk of their business, 30% of the hotel business these days go to Airbnb and like-minded or likewise companies, which means the model has shifted, and a disruptive business model is very hard to crack because most people don't understand. Hotels still argue about Airbnb, that this is cheap and they're taking the business away without even understanding why. They never understood the travelers, including me, prefer an apartment with a big fridge, with a, you know, we can have breakfast whenever we want and not when the breakfast is over and stuff like that. So it's a huge advantage for travelers. It's actually an advantage for those who are happy to rent out their houses. And the competitors, the hotels, didn't even understand what the advantage is. They thought, you know, we 5-star hotel, of course we're more expensive. Yes, they are. And you know, the service they offer and everything, yeah, that costs a lot of money, but 80% or 70% of the travelers don't need that. They may enjoy it, but they don't need it. But if they have something else that they can get instead, well, they would jump. And so solve the problem in a very, very nice way. Another one is Uber. Also, Uber has been, I mean, around now for 10 years, and the taxi organizations in the world still did not completely understand what the Uber effect is. So the problem was, Travis, he was the founder and CEO, he was in Las Vegas, and there's a nice story he communicated once, and this long line of people waiting for taxi. And if you have been in Las Vegas airport, which is a very long stretch, you see all the taxis out there. And so when you see the taxis out there in a long line, and here's a long line of people, you think, are you all totally crazy? I mean, why can't more people come, simultaneously step into the car and go away? Well, because, you know, the organization needed that way and they could not think otherwise. And parallel activities were not in their control. So it didn't work out. So Uber made a huge leap for transportation. And Lyft was a follow-on competitor in San Francisco who didn't quite make it as big, but also, you know, they were big enough to actually make the taxi business in San Francisco go next to zero. So last time when we were over last year, you know, I said to Marie, "Hey, look, there's still a taxi." So it was like an ancient animal or something like that, because people don't use it anymore. They use Uber or Lyft, and it's so much more convenient than a taxi where you still don't know whether driving the shortest way. You still don't know, is this a ripoff? And most of all, you don't know if this taxi is actually coming. Now on the taxi side is even worse. The taxis have the same problem that you may have grabbed another cab, and then they have to, they got there, nobody there anymore. So taxi business is totally non-digital old. Uber is digital new, and still the taxi centers in the world have not understood what the Uber advantage is, because it's not about the two cell phones, it's about the business model, how they run it. So let me get to yet another one. This is back, my own experience. This is Blue Roads. And back then, the problem was, this was in the old internet days, so in the early days, sales leads got into a company by simply registering something on the website by the dozens, by the hundreds a day. So we had on average, because we were already a little bit bigger, we had already about 800 leads per day, every day. And so I asked my sales team, how are they doing? And they said, it's a drag. We're pumping out the leads to our resellers, but they're not following up. It's just terrible. And so I said, okay, so who are the ones that are the worst? And so I called them and I said, hey, we're just thinking about sales leads handling and so on. And it looks like we haven't gotten really any feedback. And he said, we're creating leads ourselves to the wazoo. So unfortunately, actually, we're not disappointed if we don't get leads anymore from you. Okay, so we shut them off, but we had about 4,000 of them. Different. Others said, oh, if you give me leads, I would die for it. And so we realized we don't know in any given point in time who are actually grabbing or wanting sales leads and who don't. And so we turned it upside down and developed a pull methodology, a platform where people could pick up the leads. And if they pick the leads from the platform, somebody does this only if you want them, obviously. And so the sales of the leads to sales ratio went up through the roof. And the company was not, we were not getting funded because we had two giant competitors. And this was our first company in Silicon Valley, and people said, Axel, you had a great success story before you, but you have these competitors, and you would not be able to knock it down. And so we had a bootstrap for a long time, and this was right after September 11. Then when we thought okay, now we get funded, and then boom, there was zero funding at all. It was very similar to actually these days right now. Startups have absolute trouble getting funded because everybody who has money is conserving cash and is not investing in startups, no matter where. It's not just here in the West, it's in the East, it's in the South, it's in Africa, it's in Latin America, it's everywhere. So we had to go through a very bitter time, but I was convinced that this concept that we had was winning. And 5 years later, we were market leader. We were actually acquiring one of the competitors, and actually in the due diligence, we realized, what? If we don't acquire them, we don't lose anything. There's no gain in it because we basically owned the market. So the idea came again from a problem. So I realized the sales problem. And now Blue Roads didn't have the leads problem, but actually other companies had. But I realized that was a huge problem. And like Computer 2000, I saw the margin friction, and I thought, okay, I want to give it a shot. And Travis thought, okay, the taxi business, it's a global business, completely diverse, completely fractionized, but he wanted to solve it. And Airbnb, and you can go to any of these guys and you find similar stories. You go to Mark Benioff from Salesforce.com, also Silicon Valley company. I think they're in this building here, at least when they started, when we were there. And so he went to his boss, Larry Ellison from Oracle, and said, hey, we need a CRM system, and we make it digitally, we make it browser-based and not on-premise. And Larry thought, okay, that's a stupid idea. He actually invested a little bit in him, but he didn't want to do it himself. And where's Salesforce.com today, a $30 billion company, and doing just fine. So the problem identification, that is something that makes great ideas. It's not the hope that somebody has these ideas, but problems. And solving problems gives you one insurance. If there is a serious problem and you can solve it, there's a serious business opportunity. I mean, yeah, somebody could copy you. Welcome. Hope that they do. And I'll talk about this later on. So the idea itself, and this is a critical understanding, and I wrote this blog post about 3 or 4 years ago. The initial value of an idea is 0. So I know this is shocking, and most of people think, if you have this amazing idea, that this is worth something. No, it's not. It's absolutely worth nothing. And the reason is we humans produce on average about 4 trillion ideas per year. Well, that's a number that doesn't come from me. This is actually Berkeley University. They checked how many ideas an average person has throughout a year times, or 5 billion adult people who have already developed brain and so on. So, and even kids, by the way, have huge ideas, but we're actually putting this down to business ideas. So there are ideas to the end of the day. I mean, we drown in ideas theoretically. We realized, that the idea itself is of no value unless you bring it to life. So don't worry about your idea gets stolen, because if somebody steals something from you that has no value, welcome, have it. And there's something else if somebody steals an idea. And this is something you will probably hear in the session 9 or 10 when you talk about customers and so on. You will want to become a market leader. And the word leader is very critical in this moment, because a leader has followers. There's other people who are in the same market doing similar things, and you can only be a leader if you have followers. So if nobody copies your idea, meaning no follower, and you're the only one in the market, nobody will want to buy you. Because why is nobody else having this? People are suspicious. You may find customers, but this is tiny, tiny, tiny. So if somebody steals your idea, I can tell you this is a good thing to do. I mean, when we started Blue Roads, people started similar companies. When I started Computer 2000, people did it similarly. When Airbnb popped up, then there were other companies. When Uber got into business, there were others. There's now Grab and Lyft and other companies, and so forth. So that's a good thing, because Uber is still Uber. Mercedes is still Mercedes. And you take any of these, there is still a market leader, and this is the one who was actually copied by others. Another thing is, don't assume that your amazing idea is worth millions. I mean, just get off of that track. I see also on Quora many questions. I have a great idea. How can I sell it? Well, you cannot sell it. Nobody's interested in the idea, because every business person who has more than 2 brain cells active knows that the real work is in executing the idea and not the idea itself. Then, don't think that you're first and the only one. An interesting thing, and this goes back again, where we touched this before, about 5,000 years ago. Nobody knew exactly why pyramids popped up in Egypt, and almost at the same time, just a little later, in Southern America. But there was no connection between the countries. Our continents were already broken up. The northern hemisphere was on ice, and the continents were not completely attached anymore. So there was no way of somebody move over and tell them. And there was no internet 5,000 years ago, you might remember. Of course you do. So that means ideas pop up at the same time once in a while. And I've seen this. I mean, even though one of our vendors told Tech Data who we merged with later on, that they should go indirect only. And the story was that actually the founder said, yep, we're on that way already. We realized this is the better way. And they didn't know about us. And for a long time, I wasn't sure whether this is just blah, blah, until I realized and learned that ideas pop up sometimes simultaneously, completely independent of each other. And the simultaneous popping up of ideas has to do with problems are seen by many people at the same time. And if they all at the same time try to address a problem with their pair of eyes, with their point of view, with their perspective, that there might be others who do that too, but with 100% certainty in a little bit of different way. And so, yeah, you fight against some competition, but that's a good idea. I mean, why not? I mean, who says that there's only one? Actually, it says there's never only one. And so go for it. And don't hope the idea changes your life. I mean, the idea doesn't change your life. It's your execution that changes your life. And your execution meaning your work day in and day out, probably 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, sometimes 6 between, you should rest a little bit. And this goes in, day out, and this goes on for 5 to 7 years. So forget about the idea is the critical thing, because the idea pops up in the moment that you have the experiences of the problem. So, and if you would be very, very, very fair to the world, you would say, well, without the problem, I couldn't have an idea, because if there is no problem, there is no idea. So it's actually the problem owner who brought you the idea to do something. So he should, or she should, or the whole market should at least be participating in this. But also this doesn't really matter, because the idea has no value. It's execution. And so when you think about execution, think about 5 to 7 years to go to the top. And I had all my companies had a major breakthrough after about 5 years. It was the first moment of sort of stability. It was the time when we had large customers or many customers, depending on what our business model was. And we saw kind of, okay, a step of maturation. But we also saw, okay, where this could be going. And so 5 years is a big mark in your life of execution. And interestingly enough, also the 5 years is a mark of danger, because people get exhausted after 5 years. And I realized that too. So sometimes I actually gave up, and sometimes I knew, okay, now I need to go full speed. But execute your dream. And the dream execution, obviously it starts with the idea, but that's what makes you, your company, all the employees around you, and actually your country, what it should be and could be. If you look at Germany or the US, look at UK, look at Singapore, look at South Korea, it doesn't matter. There are a couple of people, not very many, who had their dream of life executing their idea. And they not only made a good wealth for themselves, which is almost a side effect. When you're seeing that you're having a major impact in the world, well, that is more rewarding than a couple $1 million in a Ferrari. And so, even though it's cool, I know, but the reward for being somebody who had the major impact is far beyond your Ferrari and anything else. I can tell you that. And everybody who has been there or done that will tell you the very same story. So learn to consider your dream is something that you can live, but living meaning, over time. And actually, it's the only true value you will ever have. It's your dream. It's not the Ferrari. It's not the much money that you have. These are things that come, but you will realize that executing the idea, the dream, that is more value to you than anything else. So the other good news is it doesn't really matter who you are, where you come from, what kind of gender, what kind of heritage, what kind of color, what kind of religion, what kind of political theme. It really doesn't matter. all it matters is that you basically very, very hardly want to do that. And if you look into all entrepreneurs around the world from today, from the last couple decades, you can even go hundreds of years back, you will find they come from all corners of the earth. And when you look through, scenarios, and you look, Greece and Egypt and Latin America and North America and Canada, and I mean, you take any country in the world, you'll find these guys. And so don't point to anybody, yeah, I'm not intelligent enough. Well, you don't need to be. I'm not educated enough. You don't need to be either. And your parents and whatever it is, all excuses for why you cannot do what you want to do. And if you think you need money to do that, well, you're even on a worse trip. You don't. I mean, entrepreneurs do something out of nothing. And there's something you need to learn. Do something out of nothing, because it works, and it has proven to work for thousands of years. So therefore, don't wait for, money. Don't wait for a government. Don't wait for anything that may happen to you that may allow you to do something. If this would come to you, it would come to somebody else. People would not actually do anything anymore. No, you need to step up and say, okay, these are the problems I saw. These are the ideas I had when seeing the problem, and now I want to do it. And just find ways to do it. And the one thing that helps, I mean, phenomenally, is to do this with co-founders. If you're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, amazing difference. If you do it alone, I would say the chances is 0.000, maybe another 0 or not 1. Chances are extremely low. So forget to do this on your own. I mean, that would be the worst thing. And if you're 2 and have both a positive thinking forward, you will make it. There's almost no reason why not. If there's a problem and you want to solve it, and 2 of you behind, there's a 3rd one, there's a 4th one, there's a 5th one, there's employees, there's people who fund you at the end of the day when you grow. But the first steps you need to do alone. So the greatest idea of all, and this is something I learned from an old man once, and unfortunately I don't even have his name, and I met him in a cigar shop of all places, and he said, the greatest what you can do in business, and I don't even remember why we had this conversation, but he said the greatest of all is if you help other people to be highly successful. And my initial reaction was, I mean, if I help others highly successful, I can help myself being highly successful. But I realized something in his word was so profound that I didn't answer, it just kept it. And I thought over and over, once in a while, and later on, it probably took a couple of years, I realized if you can make somebody highly successful, then others will come to you and say, can you make this to me too? Obviously, nobody will come that way, but they want this product or that service or whatever you offer. And if there is a huge level of success at the end of the day, then you will not only have a great, great feedback and rewarding, but you will get rich if you want it or not. And if you don't want to get rich, you can always give it away. But it's very hard to give something away if you don't have to. But the mechanism is that people who you help to be successful is not just you help somebody, because in the most of the cases, this somebody, if they understand the concept, also make others successful. And so I realized this when I actually read this in kind of old scribbles of mine just actually a year ago. I found it in our garage. And I realized, yeah, with Computer 3000, for instance, it wasn't just me having the biggest distributor and making money and what have you, but we actually helped the resellers to be far more profitable because we're not competing with them anymore, and margin erosion goes away. We helped all vendors, hundreds and hundreds of vendors, but hundreds of thousands of resellers. And so, yeah, we made them more successful with our idea. At Blue Road, it's the same thing. I mean, it was in a similar space, even though it was a software company, but it also helped salespeople who needed sales leads to run their business more than others who had enough of them. Simply redistribution of value made all these guys more successful. And that was part of our success. If you look at Uber, I mean, Uber made a lot of people who were students and wanted to, make some money, next to their studies, and now they could drive around. And other people were, pleased with a much more reliable service than the good old taxi business. Look at Salesforce. I mean, salespeople needed to work on their deals and so on from home, online, offline. I mean, in a hotel. Now they can. Before they couldn't, unless they had a very complicated a secure pipe directly into their corporate headquarters IT system and so forth. And if you look at all these ideas and even what you see here, I mean, it looks like there's a robot planting more salad and seems to be diligent. The salad looks good. So yes, there might be less people who work on, but at the end of the day, in this business, they can do so much more salad. And one of the reasons why we can feed pretty much anybody on earth now is because we have machines like this to actually, produce in a way, I mean, gigatons of food. And it's still not well redistributed. We know that. But we were so much better than just 50 years ago. I mean, hunger and death through hunger and starving to death is still an issue in the world. And I mean, we want to tackle that same problem. We want to tackle it by making entrepreneurs in emerging countries more successful to actually build products and build solutions, to basically build an own economy that makes, hunger and poverty, go down or basically eradicate. But all these efforts, if done right, I mean, and not just for you and me and my privacy and my money and my, whatever, it's so much more successful at one point. It's so much more rewarding at the same time. So if you focus on your own rewards, fine. If you focus on the rewards and on the successes of others, you will be successful. There's almost no way without being successful when you do that. So if we summarize it, great ideas coming from our mind and from our own experiences, meaning problems, or carefully observing the market, like Franz did, walking around, looking what problems out there, what they could solve. And when you see this, and this is why I like this picture a little bit, there is this flash in the middle, this red dot that where the idea comes from. But the idea actually comes from these experiences. And what our brain does is simply take all the experiences that you have already in your mind, connects the dots literally, and all of a sudden you have this idea. I mean, I could maybe do this. If I would do that and that. And then you come to the point, this is not working. That is not working. And this is where you need your co-founder. So if you're more the business person, then you need the more engineering guy. And if you be the engineering guy, you may have a solution, but you would not want to, think about how do we bring it to market. From carefully taking many perspectives, you need to see the opportunities. You not only see, okay, if I take this, this is going to be very difficult, or if I do this, people will laugh at me. I can tell you one thing: people will laugh at you no matter what you do when you do something outstanding, because they cannot comprehend that this is going to work, and that is your opportunity to make it work. None of the companies I founded, despite previous successes, people thought, okay, come on, Axel. I mean, now you're getting crazy. And even the fourth company was successful. I mean, not from day one, and not during. I mean, we had, cumbersome times in between. But at the end of the day, it worked out because I followed the dream of the dreams. Crafting a concept is the outcome of this. Understanding the initial value of the idea is 0. So if you talk to others, what do you think about this idea? Do that. Don't worry. I mean, definitely don't write an NDA or something like that. Tell them what the idea is. And if they copy it, welcome. The best may win. I mean, the ones who will execute well wins. And if you're afraid that the idea goes out too early, which is a fear, and I know that, but all it can happen is that the other executes better. I mean, that's the only difference, right? And if the idea comes out as soon as you start and somebody comes in and executes better, then you spend a lot of money already and you realize, okay, you're not good at execution. Then you lose your money and your time and your idea. So it's much better to lose the idea, which value is 0, by doing this early on. And after you craft your concept, get ready to execute. That's the path to value and prosperity for you, for your company, for all the employees, for your country, for your city, and so forth. And why even looking for an idea then, you may say, if it's no value? Well, the idea is the ignition. That's the key to a marvelous building. The building is the value. The key is no value. I mean, peanuts. It's the key to the building. And so the idea is important. Without the idea, it's you cannot get into the building. But the building is the value, and you have to build it. You have to build it yourself. You cannot hire somebody. You cannot do anything else. You have to do it yourself. Okay. So tomorrow, by the way, there is a new TEDx, and I'm talking about the innovative mind. So if you want to join, this is tomorrow, May 5th at 5 o'clock at Central European Time, which is 3 p.m. GMT, which is, I think, 2 p.m. or so in Ghana. It's 10 p.m. already in ICT, in Indonesia, not Indonesia, also Indonesia. So we don't have the URL yet because they will do this and announce this tomorrow. But if you go to wiforum.org/events, we will have later today, as soon as we have more data, we have the access to the video, and it's on YouTube. So it plays tomorrow at 5. Okay. Then next time, in a month from now, as I already pointed out, is idea validation. Now you have this great idea. You have your buddy who is saying, okay, this is really cool. Let's do this together. But you still not know, is the idea really, 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 really great? And does it solve really the problem? And will people want that? These 3 major questions you will need to answer before, again, you invest. And you're seeing already the whole idea of entrepreneurship is doing everything humanly possible with 0 investment. Finding the idea and having then the idea, crafting a document and so on, $0. Now, idea validation, you don't need a research institute, you don't need market research or anything. You do it yourself, and there's a couple super tricks how to do this extremely well. Again, $0. And then when we go after the idea validation, we go through the next step, and you will see again, $0. So we will guide you through a process that top entrepreneurs got used to do and got trained on or taught on. I mean, this is my, what is it called? Competitive disadvantage or unfair advantage, sorry, is, after 20 years Silicon Valley, you learn so much how to do something out of nothing, because Silicon Valley, even though it looks like it's the land of opportunities, I mean, to a degree, yes, it is, but to a degree, no. There is no venture funding until you have, an exquisite idea. There is no government support at all. The US government doesn't support Silicon Valley entrepreneurship, any of this, not a single dime. There is no institution, there's no funds, there's no grants, there is nothing. And still we get through this needle, fine little hole to the other side. And this is what we do next time. And in the meantime, I have actually a request or a question. If you like what we do, please do us a favor and go to linkedin.com company World Innovations Forum, or facebook.com World Innovations Forum, twitter.com wiforum.org. If not publicly, do it by email or WhatsApp, but let us know what you like or what you think about our work. Because also we, like you, we can only get funded if we're doing a great job. And if you tell us or the rest of the world that we're doing a great job, well, that helps us in order to help you. Okay, so if you let us know, I mean, just give us a, whatever blurb, whatever you think about us. And if you say this is all crappy, then, it's all crappy, but let us know. Okay, so as I said, next session, June 8th, session number 3 is idea validation. So we go through the same educational process like we did, and then we give a little outlook. So in July 6th, we're talking about innovative thinking, because if you have a good idea, then there are a couple things that you can make out of a good idea, an amazing idea. But that is opening up your mind far beyond what most people think. Then there is a deep innovation design process where we basically go through the entire, from innovation to bring it to market. Then on September 7, there's the customer insights. And there is a lot to learn. And I learned this, and many other people before learned this. Who are the best customer for you to start with? Who is the best customer type to grow? Who is the best customer type to really get really, really big? How do you deal with, the types and the kinds of customers? How do you deal with negative feedback and so on? These customer insights come in September, and then I think we go all the way till June next year or till March next year with topics, and there's about probably topics for the next 5 years, I would guess. So we're not running out of stories and out of content. Every first Monday in the month is our session, and then on the horizon, short term. So Deep Innovation Design webinar actually is day after tomorrow, on May 7th. Then there's the next knowledge transfer session, which I just said on June 6th. And then there is June 23 to 25. This is the World Innovations Forum Digital 2020 conference. It's a global conference. It's all digital. We did this in 2018, the very first time. It was a try and error, I have to say. It worked out very well. And we do this now again in June. And I'd like to invite all of you to register. And register early, because it would be terrible for us if you cannot come. I mean, we have theoretically, it looks like a big audience, but we're limited to 1,000 people. And last year we were 750 at the end of the whole session. So, and we will be much bigger this year. So register at wiforum.org, and then you find the Digital 2020 event. And please also join our community. And with that, I give back to our host, Alyssa, and I know she has some questions.
Yes, that was a great presentation, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. We are a little short on time, but I will address some of the questions that came in, or I'll ask a couple of the questions that came in. And one of the first questions we have is actually somebody here in Switzerland that they asked when they applied. And they kind of asked, sometimes ideas pop up when you least expect it, but what I mostly wonder is, how do you transform that idea into a business when you have no idea where to start? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, furthermore, I would also be interested in how you would distinguish a good idea from a bad idea.
Okay, yeah, I think this is a great question. It's probably relating to many people. But differentiating between the good and the bad idea is difficult, and the only way to find out is actually ask the people who the idea is sort of supposed to be. And that is what we really do in detail in 4 weeks from now, when we do idea validation. because we all don't know if an idea is really a good idea, because it's only our idea and our experience where we use it. And the first part of the question was, sometimes they pop just off. And there's a little longer answer, so I try to make it really short. Yes, sometimes ideas just pop, but the ideas that just pop are like, the pressure cooker, and you get basically the foam out of it when you open it up, but the potatoes are still down in the ground. And so is with great ideas. They are in our brain, but they're actually captured. And there's an interesting process why and how the brain does that. And we will discuss about that too. But if you see a popping idea, take it serious. Take it upside down, turn it right and left, and try to figure out whether it's actually good. But the same, as the first part of the question, ask the audience. Don't do an NDA, just figure out, is that something, we're thinking about this and that would that interest you? Yeah.
Great, that's a good answer. These questions are just flying in right now. So we have another question from one of our attendees right now that says, does exposure of those developed countries put them in the better position to generate and develop ideas more than those in developing countries?
That is a very good question. And I have to say, I don't have a perfect answer for that, because we were thinking about this ourselves many times. So there are two sort of contracting forces. One is ideas get better and better with lots and lots of experiences. And experiences are the millions and billions of impressions that we have, what we see, what we learn, what we read, what we feel, what we touch, the discussions we have with others, and so forth. And so theoretically, the developed countries have a richer set of experiences in their mind. So theoretically, that would mean they have a better chance to build something significant, so to speak. But then we also realized there are, amazing ideas, and I think South Korea is a good example. South Korea was the first who were actually addressing COVID with an AI system. It was done by, some small team in South Korea. And so amazing idea, revolutionary idea, and actually helps the world. And so, okay, South Korea is not really a developed, but it's definitely not an emerging country anymore. So in between. Then the whole concept that I shared earlier with having mobile phones across Africa. I remember the times when this idea was discussed the first time, and even I thought, that's probably the least thing they need is a mobile phone. They need food and water and sanitation and all this kind of stuff. And everybody said the same thing. But then looking back in time, that was wrong thinking, because people wanted this. And I realized this was done in so many situations before. When the automobile was developed, nobody needed an automobile. It was a dumb idea, but it was still going forward and actually founded a whole new industry. And so this comes now to the point. Building something with no market, like cell phones for Africa, automobiles for the rest of the world, which became a significant part of an industry later on, is almost not possible anymore in Europe or in Africa or in America or so. Because the first question an investor says, how big is the market? And you would say, 0. The investor says, okay, go home. Boom, finish. And no, if you actually do something for that theoretically non-existing market, that is the greatest opportunity actually of all. So therefore, the answer is yes and no, depending on how you look at it. And I don't have sort of the perfect answer yet, but at least two perspectives. Yeah.
Okay, good. I think I'll ask one more question, and then if we were unable to get to your questions, I will reply individually to you guys so that we do address all of the questions. And sorry we couldn't ask them all today, but I think the last one is, and you've kind of addressed this already, but should one ignore ideas based on its smallness?
Sorry, so can you?
Should one ignore ideas based on how small the idea may be?
Okay. I mean, a very clear answer is no. I mean, small ideas, big ideas. Think about my friend, have a chain and a plastic box and connect shopping carts. I mean, smart, silly, primitive. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but millions and millions of shopping carts are connected that way. And it's at the end of the day, I mean, it's a beautiful idea. So there is no stupid idea. There's no small, there is no idea to neglect. If there is an idea that solves the problem, go for it. I mean, anytime, anyway. Yeah.
Good, that's great. Well, thank you again, everybody, for attending our webinar today. I will follow up with you all, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And everybody, I hope you have a great day. And thank you, Axel, for your speaking today.
Sure. Thank you, Alyssa. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye.